Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brenda Perryman, and welcome to Table Talk with Brenda Perryman right here on TV 33, WHPR, Comcast 20 in Detroit, and all over the world, courtesy of the World Wide Web. And we have quite a show for you today because we're going to be discussing the bankruptcy and pensions. We're going to be discussing legislating the N-word and more. So many things for you to listen to today and chime in on. Also, we have a special guest, and we will bring him up in just a few minutes. But first, I'd like you to meet my panel today.
Well, my name is Don Lang, lifelong Detroiter, and still live in the area, obviously. And I work as an IT project manager for one of the car companies.
Good morning, or good afternoon. I'm Chris Sumrall, and I am a public service servant for the citizens of the city of Detroit.
Good afternoon. My name is Darnell McLaurin, Detroit firefighter, and the Western District Union Director for the Detroit Firefighters Association, Local 344.
And welcome, Don and Darnell. Don and Darnell, that could be a singing group. Don and Darnell, I'm so happy to have you on, our guest co-host today. And as our tradition with On This Day in African American Life in Detroit by King Coleman, who is also a co-host, I'd like to talk about what happened on this day in 1922 on March 7th, because a lot of you could probably relate to it. The Greystone Ballroom opens on Woodward Avenue in Canfield. It will become a popular dance hall and feature big bands led by Glenn Miller, Cab Calloway, Duke Ellington. Regarded as one of the nation's most entertaining venues, the Greystone will earn billing as Detroit's $1 million ballroom and accommodate 3,000 people. As a little girl, I heard about the Greystone. Of course, I never got a chance to go because it just seemed so grown up. Anyway, although race-based Jim Crow practices are not prevalent in the North at that time, the ballroom will be a segregated venue for many years. African Americans, however, will be allowed to party there on Mondays. Mondays was called Colored Night. Organizations like the NAACP and the West Side-based men's social club called the Nakarima Society, American spelled backwards, will host spectacular dances there through the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. And I believe in the 60s they had they did have some of the singing groups come there and everything. So the Greystone Ballroom, that was quite a place. And now what we're going to do, everyone, we're going to go to a quick break. We're going to bring our special guest on, and we are expecting a call from California. So we'll be back in just a moment. And you want to stay for our discussion when we get back, so hold on. We'll be right back. And we are back with Table Talk, and we're going to start with some of our hot button issues. I'd like to once again thank my co-host Don Lang, and we have Mr. Chris Sumrall and Mr. Darnell McLaurin. And one of our things we're going to talk about quickly is My Brother's Keeper, which is the initiative that President Obama started to help black youth. What do you guys think about that? And how do you think it's going to work?
Well, I applaud the initiative and the president getting behind it. It's definitely a need to shine a light on the plight of young black men in our communities. And I'm glad that he's directing resources to address that. The one concern that I do have is that, several. One, that he's getting started kind of late in his presidency to address some of these issues. I understand the politics behind it. I understand that he can be the president of Black America. But we could have used this probably several years ago. Having said that, at least we do have this initiative started. It has the potential to be successful, and I hope that it can be successful after his presidency.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to be really the telltale sign of success with this is will it have a legacy? Will it extend further than his his term currently. And so, you know, I think that it was very touching that he opened up and talked about some of his personal issues, growing up in a fatherless home, and some of the challenges that he's experienced that we can identify with. Some of us, I grew up, my dad wasn't in my home, and so I identify with his words. But I think along with you, Don, the point, or we'll have to kind of, you know, reserve judgment to see actually the effectiveness of this. You know, it sounds great, but hopefully it filters down into those who really need it in the community, and it doesn't get you know, sidelined in DC.
Darnell?
Yes, that's some of my concerns also. Is I'm interested in how far reaching it will be. It's a vast amount of young black men in America that's affected in a negative way, and the amount of money that's attached to this particular bill, I'm just really interested in knowing how far reaching it will be. How far down will it actually reach to those who really need it the most?
You know, and my concern is they have people on these committees kind of deciding what's going to happen, what's what, and all of that. But, you know, I hope it doesn't get too top heavy. And it has to come down. What do you think we could do in Detroit area to get that going? Now, there are some good mentorship programs, but what do you think we could do with the young men who are kind of wayward? Because the president did say, I made a lot of mistakes. And when he told of the mistakes, he said, I got high. He did other things. One of the boys said, was that you? And you're like, you made those mistakes and you still became president? You know.
I think one of the first things that's necessary is to try to find a common ground with some of these young men, so that we're approaching them, you know, with a level eye. They don't feel defensive. We want to reach them. We don't want to speak at them. We want to have a dialogue with them. And I think that each one of us will have a capacity or ability to do something. And if we can identify whether it's, some of us have more time, some of us have resources, some of us have great ideas. And so to identify what we can contribute to the recipe, I think that's going to be, you know, interesting, specifically in Detroit, because we see a lot of interest in the city, not specifically directed toward young African American men. And so we're going to have to make a concentrated effort or a conscious effort to make this a top priority, because while dollars are coming in the city and attention is coming to the city, it's not really geared toward the African American boys in the community.
Right, and they are such a big part of our community. And if they could have just other outlets, the unfortunate thing is a lot of the schools in the city don't have a lot of extracurricular activities and programs and so forth. I know all of you were involved in high school. Isn't that correct?
Yes,
absolutely.
There's a movie out that just came out recently, starring Cuba Gooding Jr., and it was about a young man in the D.C. area who came home from prison and started a chess club. And because he's lied on his application that he was a convict, he was fired from his job where the initial program started, and he opened up a chess house, and it involved a lot of kids in the community. He took them to different chess tournaments, and he turned a lot of kids' lives around. I think a lot of programs are out there, and they're good, but I think the adults have to step in. We have to interfere in these child's lives and show them the way. There's a lot of children that just without going to school, they don't see an adult. And so we have to step up as adults and take care of our children, and then the programs can supplement that. But it all begins with the adults.
It all begins with the adults. Hopefully it begins in the home. If not, I think the teachers, having been a teacher, I just think the teachers play a big part in raising children too. Like they say, it takes a village. And I think that we had a part. I know that I was particularly close to boys besides girls when I was teaching, and it was very important. And I did a lot of extracurricular because I felt it kept kids off, you know, stopped them from being idle, you know. So I hope that this initiative works, and I share what you said, Don and Chris and Darnell. I want to see how it plays out. I really do, and I want it not to be an epic fail. Now, pensions. This pension situation here in Detroit. area. Can you explain something? Now, you're both part of the firefighters union, Darnell and Chris.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, the firefighters and city employees and policemen, they're involved in this bankruptcy thing. Could you explain it to us, please? Darnell?
Yes. Essentially, Bill Public Act 436 gave the state the ability to appoint an emergency manager over the finances of the city of Detroit. From that, they claim $18 billion, and that $18 billion is everything that the city owe together. So it'll be like your house note. It's not the house note; it's the total amount of the house.
Oh.
It's the total amount of the car. So they compounded the debt to get to this level. To pay the creditors off, they want to do that on the backs of the workers of the city of Detroit. It's 9,700 workers in the city of Detroit. Some 4,000 are police and firefighters. Our pension is being attacked. First, you have to understand that the reason why the pension was given constitutional value was because we don't pay into Social Security. So if you take our pensions away, we don't have anything for retirement.
Oh, you don't pay into Social
We
Security?
do not pay into Social Security, and that's one of the biggest reasons why they gave it the constitutionality status. So if they take our pension, we have nothing to retire on. And this is something that they're not telling the public, and the public needs to know. First of all, Public Act 436, the citizens of the state of Michigan voted against it. They turned it around, added money to it, so you couldn't take it up for a referendum vote, and so we can't change that. It's legalized gangsterism, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So essentially, through that process, the governor appointed an emergency manager to do something that he could not legally do. And
Wow. Gosh.
yeah, and so it was pushing his agenda through because from a state level, he has an obligation to guarantee or to secure those pensions, but the emergency manager doesn't have that same responsibility. So they are claiming, and so we can see that there's a lot of twists and turns and what appears to be underhanded agenda. And but even bigger than that, we're talking about not only future retirees, we're talking about individuals who are living on a very modest fixed income currently.
And those individuals did not have Social Security.
They
correct?
no, they do not have access to
Some
Social
of
Security.
the firefighters and the.
And police.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, now, what's being done on behalf of the unions about this, or people? I know people are protesting, but can you tell us a little more?
Right. We're challenging on every level that we could. The state attorney general just came out with a ruling that it was unconstitutional for
Absolutely.
the courts to take our pensions, to pay off creditors. The judge ruled that he wouldn't be interested in any plan that had large slash cuts to our pensions. Well, we aren't interested in any plan that had cuts to our pension. We earn those cuts, and after 30, 35 years...
You mean you earned the pension?
Right, we earn those pensions, and after 30 or 35 years, we deserve those pensions. And if you see the press lately, they were talking about the 10% pension cut. That's a 10% cut, but there's also an 18% cost of living cut that they haven't spoken about. And then there's a hard 8% freeze or cut when the pension is frozen.
So essentially, compounded, you're looking somewhere around 30% cut on average, maybe a little bit more,
Right.
for those existing retirees as well as those future retirees. And so if you can imagine, let's put it into real numbers. If we're talking about a regular pension for a City of Detroit worker, we're looking at somewhere around $1,800 a month.
A little more, yes.
A little bit more.
Roughly.
Let's say $2,000 a month. And if we're talking about
Not a month.
$2,000 a month, a pension.
Oh.
And then we're talking about a 30% cut of that. We're talking about cutting $600 or a little bit over $600. And so if you can imagine, we're talking about real numbers here. You know, we speak in percentages, but we're talking about real numbers, and we know that there's nothing getting cheaper. You know, and the conversation exists as far as creditors and municipal bond investors and things like that. Well, and they're saying, well, these folks with the pension should bear a brunt of this load. Well, our position is we beg to differ, because although municipal bonds, they're less risk as far as on the stock market or something like, it's still an investment. And so in any investment, there's a calculated gain or risk. But as an employee of the city of Detroit, I doubt anyone took the job knowing that a portion of their check would be put aside, and it may or may not be there come their retirement. And so we can see that it's not about logic, it's not about morals, and it will really be about opinion, and it'll be decided in the court hopefully within the next 12 months or so.
That just seems so wrong, to lay people's lives out there like that.
Yeah, I wanted to cede most of my time to Darnell and Chris, because you guys are on the front lines. You had information that wasn't privy to the public, and you guys needed to bring this to the public so we all could understand. I know why the city went into bankruptcy. For the most part, we all do. I didn't think that they were able to manage their way out of their financial crisis. So I understand them going into bankruptcy. The one thing that I did not want to see happen is what is happening with the pensioners. What I would like to see is you guys separated from everyone else, made whole, and then let the financial institutions have to bear the brunt of what's going to have to happen in straightening out the city's finances. So it's just a terrible thing what's happening to the pensioners. Hopefully this will wind its way through the courts and come out on the right side for you guys.
Well, and definitely we appreciate that, and that's the feedback we've been getting from mostly everybody. Yeah. But unfortunately, our position is that we feel that this was one of the primary reasons to enter into this bankruptcy, to directly go after these funds that are on a nationwide scale doing in the top 5%. I know our pension was somewhere over 95%, 96% funded. And so we would be in the top 1 or 2% of in the country. Yet and still, there's billions of dollars in these funds that they want to gain access to. And they tried in other different ways. And so now with this emergency manager law and this bankruptcy, it's really opening up the door to kind of pillage those storehouses, so to speak.
Setting a precedence.
Yes, and every time, like I looked at the fire that was 2 days ago on Outer Drive in Schoolcraft, and the firefighters out there, I don't know how many companies they had out there to fight that. And then yesterday they showed one that I know was Engine 40. It had to be. It was not. It was near Finkel.
Right.
It was
Finkel and Greenlawn, I believe.
Yes, I saw that. And every time I see that, and every time I see the firefighters, I said they're working so hard, and they're trying to cut. I mean, these people put their lives on the line.
Yes, and I want to say this too. If you remember back, the city of Detroit was owed profit sharing from the state to the tune of roughly $250 million. And if you look recently, the state had $1.3 billion surplus. They could have easily fixed the issues that was in the city of Detroit, but they didn't want to do that because it's not about fixing Detroit. It was about taking over Detroit. And now they had this deal where they want to bring in or save the so-called save the art, and this 3-part deal with the state and the DIA.
Private money.
Right.
Yeah.
Even with that deal, there were some connotations attached to that we would have to take cuts in our pension. So it's not about fixing Detroit, it's about taking over Detroit.
Well, quickly, what can we, the citizens, do?
The citizens need to be aware of what's going on, pay attention, and you have to seek out information, because the citizens of Detroit are voters, and they elect these individuals into office, and you have to understand, when you elect someone, do they really represent you? Do they represent your best interests? And that's what people really have to understand. The citizens of the state of Michigan voted an act down that the governor did. They redid that act, which was Public Act 436. And essentially everything that they wanted to do, 436 gave them the ability to do that, because they attached funding to it, and where it could not be put up for a referendum vote now. So you have to be conscious of who you're voting for, why are you voting for them, and do they serve your interests?
Wow, excellent, excellent. You hear that, ladies and gentlemen? We have to, because if it happens here, it'll happen anywhere. Don't you agree?
Absolutely, and it's really just an indicator of what's coming to a theater near you. There were times when, as public servants, we were confident that that the service that we provided and what we put on the line every day, our lives and our well-being, that we will be taken care of. But that's not the case. And so what we want to do, we want to act as ambassadors for the people that are a little bit out of arm's reach now, to let them know, like, look, don't think that this doesn't affect you, because it's coming soon. It's coming faster than you think, and it's definitely going to affect you one way or the other. We've got an issue now where individuals, it used to be, when I joined the Detroit Fire Department, there were around 10,000 folks who would line up to try and become a servant for the citizens of the city of Detroit. Yeah. It's getting to the point now to where individuals are questioning, is it worth it? Because not only are we talking about pensions, but we're talking about also health care if you're injured on the job. There's a classic example. You want to tell them about Dougie, how this individual is paralyzed. He's paralyzed, and now his medical benefits, the benefits that he needs for therapy, for different medical equipment, they've been taken away.
Essentially, they eliminated health care for retirees. They have to go on the open market and search out a health care plan. The city has given them $150 a month stipend. And I don't know if you've been out on the market looking for health care. $150 will not pay for health care, let alone for a family, but even for a couple.
Absolutely.
So essentially, any individual who's on a duty disability through the city of Detroit is given a $400 a month stipend. The difference is a good firefighter, Doogie, Brenda Maluski, was injured at a fire on the east side of Detroit and was paralyzed from the waist down. Well, he's simply another member that was put on the duty disability. There isn't a category for, bad injuries, good injuries. Everybody that's on the duty disability has lost their health care. And so this individual who needs therapy, equipment, everything for his paralyzation, exactly, has been essentially eliminated. But they gave him a check for $400 this month.
Well, I echo what Don says. The public needs to know more about this. Don't you agree?
Yeah, and they're setting this up to replay itself in other municipalities around the state of Michigan. And it hasn't gone unnoticed that these municipalities, for the most part, are predominantly black cities. So there's a racial component to this as well that I don't know if you guys want to get into. So we have to keep an eye into as what's going on. I would like to know how we could become more involved outside of knowing what's going on. Who do we need to reach out and touch? My understanding is there are some representatives in the state house that they're working to try and block this, but they're outnumbered. Those are Democrats who are outnumbered. So exactly. What are some of the other things that we can do to address this?
You can contact your locals. You can contact your AFL-CIO. You can contact any of the unionized locals. There's a lot of things that's going on. I have another source of information that I could also give to you. But the citizens need to be aware, understand, watch the news, really pay attention to what's going on, because it's affecting us now, but it will eventually affect everybody else
in
later.
The future.
Exactly. And I understand the citizens need their services. They do. They need the garbage collection. They need police and fire protection. They need EMS when you call them. They need lights on. So they need a lot of things. The city has to figure out a way to provide the service to the community, but they have to do it reasonably.
Right, absolutely. And speaking of race, one of the other social topics we wanted to talk about was the N-word. Recently, ESPN, they did an Outside the Line special on the N-word, but they want to, there's a man named John Wooten who, he's with some organization, I'm not sure which one it was, I'll find it, but he's with this organization, and they want to ban it from football, and if you use it during a football game, there's a 15-yard penalty for use of that word on the field. Now, guys, do you think you could legislate something like that?
No, not on the field. And who are they supposed to be legislating? I mean, for the most part, on the field, whether you like the word or not, those that word is being used by black athletes towards other black athletes. Rare, though it happens, rare does it happen with a white athlete talking towards a black
Well,
athlete.
incognito used
Well,
it.
that's the rarity, but it does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but you can't legislate. As much as I hate that word, you can't legislate morality. You can't legislate the N-word
Right.
out of private entities such as the NFL or in our society as a whole.
And I think it's a classic example of seeing the straw in one person's eye while you have the rafter in yours. The NFL also has a team, and it is known as the Washington Redskins. And we know that there's been a lot of conversation of how that's quite offensive. Well, the owner recently came out and said, "I'm not changing the name," and it seemed as if that just went away. And I think that this is unfortunately, this is it appears to be another example of policing black folks, because again, this isn't directed toward anyone except the black players.
Exactly. Why the N-word? Why not foul language altogether?
Period. Exactly.
Why that particular word? Why shine light on that word that has caused a lot of havoc in our community since the beginning of our time?
And what it's going to do, it's going to highlight and it's going to bring attention, unnecessary bad attention to players who are just playing in the game. And while I don't condone the use of the word, it's really going to play what I think would be an unfair or inappropriate factor in the game. You know, I can only imagine how that would play out, and you know, how it would really, as a fan of the game and as you know, not a fan of the word, I can imagine some of the scenarios in which that could possibly happen and so forth and so on. And I think that the NFL is really trying to bite off more than it can chew.
Yeah.
And while there may be some really great points and it may be a great soundbite, I think, again, like Don said, you can't legislate morality, and I think that it's much ado about nothing, and we'll see. I think the Players Association will have a lot to say about it too.
I think John Wooten is trying to address a social issue on the field of the NFL, and I just don't believe you can do that.
But also, if you look at the commissioner in the NFL, he is, you know, he's known as kind of like a little tyrant, and I don't know if him and Wooten got together, but you know, he tries to rule with an iron fist, and you know, maybe this is another way of him trying to exert authority or something. I don't know, but again, I don't think that this is appropriate, an appropriate you know, subject for the NFL to try to I think that even if it came from the players union, I could respect it a little bit more, you know, but you know, coming from Mr. Wooten, I think that it's really on shaky ground.
Right. They were talking about the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers walked through the locker room, and he was, and some of the players would listen to the radio or music or whatever, and the music was playing, had the N-word in it, and he told them he didn't want to hear that type of music in his locker room, and so they turned the music off. I have a white friend who heard someone use the word and got upset. I really can't fathom how folks who use this word freely for many years, decades, are now telling people who do use it in their own circle, you can't use that word.
But you know, sometimes people come to an awakening, you know, and say, wow, I shouldn't have used that word. I remember, and you all were little people, when Richard Pryor said he wasn't going to use that word anymore.
I wasn't that little when he said that.
Right.
Didn't we bury that word?
Right. It was,
Well,
yeah,
please,
somebody, I think they dug it up.
buried that word. It resurrected itself.
Right, yeah.
I mean, the NAACP buried the N-word a few years ago, and it resurrected itself. It's just, it's going to have to start with the people who want to or don't want to use it, because at some schools, they were talking to these kids who went to an interracial high school, and it was just a part of what the way they talked, and it was allowed, in other words. And
Right. I think you have to have respect for yourself, and curb what you do and what you say for yourself. Certainly on the playground, on the basketball court, which end up being the NBA court and end up being the NFL, that word has been thrown around and used. I don't think anybody, and I don't know, but I certainly wouldn't call, or I haven't seen anyone call a white person that word. It's always spoken in between friends, pals, buddies. You can say they use that as a term of endearment. However it is used, I'm saying to stop it is going to be virtually impossible. You can throw a flag on it if you want to, but to stop the word from being used is almost virtually impossible. It has to be the individual who wants to correct himself. It's just like you do certain things in front of your parents. It's certain things you don't do in front of your parents. So if using that word, it's some places that they don't use it. And it's strange that when you're talking to them as when a reporter got a mic in their face, they don't use it. So they know when to use it and when not to use it. But to stop it on the field, I think it's going to be impossible. As Chris said, this is going to be a battle that's going to be, I believe, unwinnable.
What I'd like to see is that the NFL actually has done a really good job with several programs that they have when individuals enter into the league, where they basically take these college kids and they put them through about 2 to 3 weeks of intense class, and it's really a sensitivity training. It's about business, how to manage your funds, so forth and so on. And so I'd like to see an education as far as maybe the history of the word, how it affects people, how people receive it. Maybe, I'd like to see maybe that incorporated versus just, okay, we're going to penalize you 15 yards every time we hear it. And so to give some understanding to why it is offensive, maybe in that training, maybe in each team's mandated training camp. Maybe they have some type of sensitivity training every year. And from there, I think that it will be from the inside out versus just force-fed, which people are naturally going to reject.
Also, we've seen the sports talk shows in recent weeks about the use of the N-word. And there are several issues here. One, the use of the word amongst African American people themselves, how we use it amongst ourselves. Two, how other people use that word towards Black Americans. And lastly, now trying to legislate that word in a place of business, which is what the football field is. And I don't think throwing a flag for a 15-yard penalty is going to address any of that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to play out.
And
over this
also
season.
another point, they tried to bring up the history of the word. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he was having dinner with John Wooten one evening, and there's this lady, this white woman, who came up to the table and said, "You sure are tall," and asked him to stand up and everything. He stood up, and because Kareem is about 7 foot, right?
A little over there, about 7'3".
Yes,
Yeah.
and then she said to John Wooten, "Wow, that's a tall N-word you're sitting here with you. You got a tall N-word sitting here with you." And he just felt like he could just shrink. I mean, what do you do? What do you do? And then Common talked about the fact how it's used as a so-called term of endearment and everything. I think a lot of people just don't understand the history of the word. It's actually part of a fad that's gone on for years and years and years. And I'll never forget, I had a young man in class. I didn't allow it in my class. And I had a young man who said, he said that. And I had warned him, you can't say that. And I went and called his dad because I was suspending him. And his dad said, "Oh, Miss Perryman, they all say it. They all say that." I said, "Listen, I'm trying to teach him the language of the marketplace. He already knows the language of the street. Because if he gets out there and using that word, he's not going to get that job. He's going to maybe be fired from that job." I think we just need to teach a little more about the history.
Absolutely.
Plus, I had a paper on the history of the word and everything, and I had the students who I suspended really write an essay on it.
And again, lastly, I can't think, and I challenge the rest of the panel to think of a more polarizing or more a word that has so much controversy. It's interesting that in this country, blacks are still a minority, but that word that is associated with us, that's still, the word that even when you go, outside the United States, it's still a word that's shrouded in so much negativity. It could be a little bit of unknowing. They don't know how to take it. Is it a term of endearment? Is it something offensive? Because there's a flip side. There's a flip side to where individuals who have received some of the backlash and some of the treatment from racist comments, and they may feel slighted that You think a 15-yard penalty is equivalent to, checking this word? And so there's always two sides to that coin. And I think that the NFL needs to understand that they're a business and that their product that they do well is play football. It's not to legislate conversation. So stick to what you do best. And
Well, if you've ever been to some of the rap concerts and some of these expensive ones where most of the audience is white and the rappers are using the N word, they're up there, they know every word and they're singing it along with the rappers. And when I saw that, I didn't know how to take it. You see all these white people say, yeah, N word, this and that. I mean, it was like, are we supposed to, on this ground, this hallowed ground, we have to give a pass for that because it's part of a song? That's another dilemma.
yeah, so it's we'll see how that goes again. I
Well,
think
good
that,
luck to
yeah.
that. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
And we didn't get a chance because I know we're going to sign off in a couple of minutes. But we wanted to talk, ladies and gentlemen, about Lupita Nyong'o's win and what that could mean for black women and girls and stuff. And a lot of people have been talking about how she's set another standard for beauty. Well, that's a standard of beauty that we have had as a people for eons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that what it did, it brought the eye to something that we've known for a long time. She's beautiful as in her outward appearance, obviously, but the word that I think about when I watch her, or when I listen to her, is regal. And it brings an association of what we've always known, that our beautiful black women are queens. They're regal, but the way that she
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're quite welcome, my queen. But so now what we see is a dynamic as to, will this become popular culture? Will it become popular
To just be natural.
to be natural, but also to take pride in richer skin?
Well, all skins.
It's always. The reason why I said richer skin or darker skin is because that there has been historically pride in being, unfortunately, lighter skin versus dark skin. And so, and unfortunately.
And Henry Tyler has just given me the wrap-up sign, and this has been the fastest hour in television.
They cut off on the one dark-skinned gal on the panel. You see what I'm talking
Oh
about?
gosh, you are just so, oh man, second class, man. No, I'm joking. Don, thank you. Darnell,
My
thank
pleasure.
you so much. You
Thank
all
you
add
so
so
much.
much, and we
Yeah.
could have done an hour on the pensions.
They got to come back next week. They
Well,
got to come back
yeah.
next week. So.
Well, I hope you'll be back.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week on Table Talk with Brenda Perryman, and we will see you, of course, at 9 o'clock next week because we have a congressional candidate on my morning show, and we have Dr. Griffith. So we got a lot happening here at TV 33. So I want to thank Devin Cobb, and I want to thank his mom, April, and Cheryl Ajamu also. Thank you.